Top Med Talk.
Well, hello and welcome to Top Med Talk. We're coming to you from the 7th Collaborative Clinical Trials in Anaesthesiology meeting in Prato, Italy. I'm here with my co-host Monty Mythen. Have you had a good day, Monty?
Absolutely wonderful day. I've actually spent most of it in the satellite room where we're doing the recording for Top Med Talks. I've been watching all that going on. At the same time, we're seeing the lectures transmitted in here and the great discussion that's happening. So it's been fantastic.
Awesome. Well, now we're lucky enough to have two of the emerging research leaders. In fact, they've probably emerged. We've got Tom Abbott and James Glasbey with us to talk about their work, in particular their platform trials. So, Tom, would you like to just briefly introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Tom Abbott. I'm an anaesthetist and a clinical lecturer at Queen Mary University of London, and my clinical work is at the Royal London Hospital. My research centres around population epidemiology and the interface between using large data sets in clinical trials. And we're at the start of setting up a platform trial to try to integrate clinical trials with routinely collected data to try to both improve diversity of patient inclusion in research and also to address important trial questions.
And you're the social media editor of the British Journal of Anaesthesia.
That's correct.
Excellent. And James, tell us about yourself.
Sure. So my name is James. I live in the cultural capital of England, which is Birmingham, of course.
Birmingham.
Exactly. I'm a surgical trainee, so it's delightful to be here with a mainly anaesthetic crowd. I think there's 6 surgeons this year, which is a bit of a growth from last year. I'm an academic clinical lecturer in global surgery and about halfway through my clinical surgical training. I've been involved in collaborative research groups for about 10 years now, starting in the UK, and then we sort of expanded globally. And it's been a delight to work with colleagues around the world as things have expanded, and we've grown in growth and infrastructure over the last 8 or so years since we were funded by the NIHR as a global health research unit. We've increasingly become more complex in our trial designs, going from parallel arm designs to cluster randomized trials, and are now moving into platform trials, because many of the problems that we seek to address together across our global community are complex and multifactorial and would benefit from multi-component, multifactorial design. So very excited to talk to you today.
Excellent. So what great successes do you think we've seen in the platform world? There've been a number of them referred to here, but from your perspective, where do you say that there's hope?
Well, I think COVID has really proliferated the platform design across the world and across medical specialities. We see the recovery in the UK, and REMAP-CAP spoken a lot about here. I have to say, I didn't know much about platform trials other than Stampede prior to the pandemic. Max Palmer's been helping us with a trial called Rossini 2, which is now becoming a platform trial, but started life as a multi-arm, multi-stage study. It was very challenging to get funded, actually. It went in 3 times to the NIHR HTA, each time becoming slightly less ambitious and with a slightly more fixed sample size and a decreased event rate, which were the things that the panel really worried about. But that's now completed recruitment. It was the first trial in surgery to use a multi-arm, multi-stage design, and has found some interesting and surprising results. So I think some great examples from infectious disease, and hopefully one with some important messages from surgery.
So not everyone's going to know Max Palmer. I think I do. I think he's the MRC Clinical Trials Institute that moved into UCL a few years ago, the director there. But they've laid their stall out from the point of view of having alternative trial designs over the last couple of decades. So from your experience, is Max available on speed dial if we need him?
I think he runs a big and impressive unit at the MRC that have increasingly developed concepts around more complex designs to address questions which perhaps lean towards statistical concepts which require more challenging approaches. I think he's got a big team. He's obviously very busy. So I think what the trial units do in general is have new business meetings where they are able to be open to new ideas. And then, as with everything, it's about answering the research question with the right design and the right team. So I think if you were considering designing a platform trial, then firstly ask, do you definitely have to? Because it's very complex and expensive and challenging. And then ask, which team do you have around you? What's the expertise within your immediate network? And then where can I approach for more information?
So, James, when I talk to my surgical colleagues about surgical research, they 100% of them mention the skill of the surgeon as being an overwhelmingly important factor. How do you deal with that in these large surgical trials you're doing, both in high-income countries and in middle and low-resource countries?
That's a very good question. I hate to sell out my surgical counterparts, but I think whilst it is obviously crucial to have a technically competent surgeon, I think we're probably oversell our responsibility in getting people through to a positive outcome sometimes. I guess the checklist is the ultimate example. So we've worried about small technical innovations for 100 years, and then all we had to do was introduce ourselves to one another, and it cut mortality better than we could ever imagine with probably a technical surgical innovation. I think that there is ways of accounting for surgical learning effects within trials. There's some great work going on within Leeds, within Julia Brown's team, looking at statistical considerations in learning curves. It's particularly important for emerging technologies where people perhaps aren't completely confident with techniques as they're being adopted, and that could potentially have an effect on outcome. There's a Dutch gastric surgery trial, which was the first one to look specifically at that concept, and found that if you compared the late phase adoption to the early phase adoption, you had completely different effects of the laparoscopic versus open intervention. So you could see benefit in people with established laparoscopic practice, and of those in the early phase of the learning curve, it was really detrimental, which I think we've all probably perhaps seen in practice, but to see that in a trial was quite shocking, I guess. So it's an important consideration. There's different ways of getting around it. You can do expertise-based trials where you only do trials with centres that do a lot of that type of surgical innovative procedure, for example, and you can model for learning curves within trial analyses now to account for some of those concepts. But yeah, I think it's a really exciting area.
I don't think we've talked about clustering of anaesthetist expertise in our anaesthesia trials. We should
Interesting
bring that
concept.
up. Yeah, what do you think, Tom?
I think we have seen it in some trials of regional anaesthesia, or perhaps where there's a very procedural aspect to the intervention, and maybe we also see this in trials where there haven't been perhaps the result that people have wanted, that then is attributed to operator technical expertise or lack of, or differences or heterogeneity in that aspect. So I think the potential similarities with sort of surgical trials and learning curves is interesting and applicable to anaesthesia, I think.
It goes right back to the MASTER trial, which was the first trial conducted by the ANSCA Clinical Trials Network. And there were comments made that, Australians are terrible at epidurals, or perhaps that people at hospitals where they don't do many did worse than people at hospitals where they did. And there's 2 hospitals in Melbourne separated by 4 kilometres, which fitted the bill, and the outcomes were the same. So it's a quite interesting problem. So tell us about your platform proposal.
So our platform is based in the UK. It's called the Protect platform, the perioperative platform trial, and it's a multifactorial platform.
It's a multifactorial platform.
So a platform that can accommodate multiple intervention comparisons, not necessarily a multi-arm, multi-stage design, which compares to a common control group, but our infrastructure will be able to accommodate almost analogues of traditional parallel group randomized trials or other designs that can be incorporated as they go along. And I think what we're trying to really take advantage of is what Sharon Love has been talking about in the 2 talks she's given over the last couple of days, really around the versatility of a platform in accommodating future changes. And so our platform is really grounded in a very broad inclusion, which means that we can adapt to novel interventions in the future. Our infrastructure is very heavily weighted towards routinely collected data and linkage with national data within the UK. And that's for 2 reasons. One, it's to allow a much longer horizon for follow-up, and 2, it's to reduce the burden of data collection both on patient participants, which is very important to patients, and also to researchers to try to benefit from the potential efficiencies of platforms in reducing costs and time associated with trials.
Tom, are you ready for prime time? Are you ready to go?
We are not quite, but we are making progress. I think part of the issue is that this is very new methodology, and James has already alluded to the MRC UCL unit, which is one of only a handful of CTUs, clinical trial units in the UK, that have expertise delivering platform designs. We're working with the Pragmatic Clinical Trials Unit at Queen Mary University of London, which we have a long-established relationship with, but this will be the first platform that Queen Mary University has sponsored, and we're working collaboratively with the sort of research governance team to develop a platform in a way that will suit both them and the regulators.
And when you are ready to start, which I'm guessing will be fairly soon, if somebody had a great idea and wanted to try and answer a question with you, what's the route in?
We're developing our processes for that, but I want to say that we are open and that we are delighted to collaborate with people, and we see the infrastructure that we're building as an open resource for UK perioperative medicine, researchers and hopefully wider to answer important research questions that can change the way that we practice anaesthesia and perioperative medicine. And so if people have a great idea, please come to us, use our infrastructure, work with us to develop funding applications.
You received the centenary grant from the British Journal of Anaesthesia for this trial.
I did.
Congratulations. It was a wonderful trial, and we got lots of other great applications as well, I must say. So I'd like to ask both of you, what's it like hanging around with all us old fogey trialists, you know? What do you see as the challenges and the potential opportunities moving forward as mid-career clinical trialists?
I always find coming to this meeting, and I've been very fortunate to come to this meeting several times, it's quite awe-inspiring to sort of rub shoulders with very experienced researchers who've changed the way that we deliver anaesthesia and perioperative medicine and surgery. So it's wonderful to be here and to benefit from experience and mentorship. In terms of looking forward, I think that bridging that gap between early career researcher, mid-career researcher is challenging. And I think particularly more broadly in the UK, we're really seeing the effects of that where there are recognised national issues with maintaining a body of clinician scientists to support teaching of medicine and research in the UK, which over the last 10 years is declining and was a major export from the United Kingdom. How we preserve that and boost that into the future is a challenge. So if you have any ideas,
Well, Monty might have ideas as a former chair of an anaesthesia research department.
But it's a problem, right?
It's a challenge. So it has to mean that the value in that has to be recognised, and that needs to be recognised by the population and therefore by the politicians and the payers of different routes. But I mean, I think there's hope. You know, that's all we can say at the moment.
I'm smiling at the hope.
On what basis are you hopeful?
I think I've lived through this before. So through my career, I started in academia at a time when we were at quite a low point. I'm not sure quite as low in the UK as we are at the moment, but it was a pretty low point. And there was quite a lot of exodus to other countries, and there was no real hope of getting academic training unless you went elsewhere. And then, 10 years later, it's a long wait, things were really starting to look good again, and then 20 years later, they look really good. And yeah, there we go. So that's why I think there's hope.
Absolutely. What we've seen in the post-COVID training scenario is that there's still this voracious appetite for getting involved in research studies that are set up. But because there was a 3 or 4 year period where it was difficult to lead new and emerging studies, typically cohort studies, perhaps some kind of small pilot or small randomized trials, then there is a bit of a dearth of people with the confidence and mentorship to take on new studies. But I think that will come back, and it just needs a bit of time and reignition. I think platform trials are a really interesting opportunity because each intervention comparison has its own chief investigator and often a co-chief investigator. And that can be an emerging researcher trainee as well as a more established investigator. So as we see additions to Tom's platform, the platforms in the Global South that we're running, and that does bring a new cadre of researchers through to also benefit from your experience as a really seasoned senior trialist group.
And a National Health Service should be a great place to do it.
Yes.
We have a unique patient identifier from birth to grave. That's unusual in many healthcare systems. We have hospital episode statistics that we can link with other systems. So we probably should be shouting more about the opportunities that there are in the UK and the National Health Service.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And I should say that I think that the phrase has been mentioned a few times around mentorship is incredibly important of more junior researchers, which I think is a real benefit of meetings like this, but also the opportunities afforded by awards like the BGA Centenary Award and other NIHR awards that can support that gap between early career and mid-career researchers that can boost you to perhaps larger NIHR recognition or awards to support career development.
And then we have some great international collaborators that we often succeed in doing international collaborative trials with.
Yes, the ANZCA Clinical Trials Network has collaborated with a few different countries and organisations, probably most notably Canada, with the crew from the Population Health Institute. Yeah. What's next for you, James? And this is, ribbing you a bit apart from finishing your surgical training.
Yeah, no, it's taken me forever. It's a very long process in the UK. So we're developing a new platform trial around post-operative recovery called PUMA. It's come from the community engagement and involvement work where patients in our partner countries have reported they want to obviously survive their operation, but then get back to work-life care, particularly because of the financial constraints in those environments and the risk of catastrophic expenditure.
In lower middle-income countries.
So we're trying to design a platform which will help people get better and back to life after surgery. And it's going to be a challenge because it's a slightly ill-defined outcome and it's very multifactorial, but I think it will lend itself well to the flexibility and agility of a platform design. So I've had some great discussions around that here today and working with our hub leads to identify emerging investigators to help support that. And hopefully we can design that together and do something meaningful for patients around the world.
How did you get involved with this type of global surgery research?
So we started something called StarSurge back in 2013, leaning on the trainee research collaborative model. And I bumped into Anil Bank, who is the leader of our global surgery unit now, but at the time was about my stage of training. I was our Association of Surgeons in Training medical student representative, and we had a conversation over a beer about perhaps doing a student-driven collaborative. At the time, everyone said, this is ridiculous, students can't collect data, and we wouldn't trust it if they did, and it'll fall apart, governance will be impossible. But we managed to successfully run a study with a steering group of 8 service, and then we asked, do you think we could do this internationally? And we approached people through associations and research organizations just such as this. And we found a group of people that were happy to take a chance together. And we ran our Global Surge 1 study in 2015. And then from there, the collaboration has grown in strength and we've managed to get some funding for trials. And yeah, it's been a very interesting journey to follow. I've been very lucky to have been in the right place at the right time and share a vision perhaps of doing things to benefit patients in a collaborative way, which shares equitable partnership with colleagues around the world. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey so far and one that I hope to continue.
When Desiree Chappell and I interview women about their journeys, they often mention luck. And we often say, luck favours the bold, or, luck favours people with talent and perseverance. And I'm sure that that's the case with James and Tom, who may consider themselves lucky but are actually, amazing. Don't you think, Monty?
Absolutely. Yeah. You've made your luck.
I would say lucky, but it's nice to hear that sometimes.
So I think we've run out of time. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. You'll be able to hear this podcast on our YouTube channel. And if you go there, please give us a big thumbs up because everything helps. But you'll also be able to get it on our app and you'll be able to find links to it on all of our socials. We'd like to thank our sponsors, including Medtronic, GE Healthcare, and who Monty works for now, Edwards Life Sciences. Thanks so much for having us.
Thank
you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely great.
Top Med Talk.
Thanks for downloading Top Med Talk. Don't forget to subscribe, check us out on YouTube, and of course on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and X. Also, it's important to remember that Top Med Talk is the broadcasting arm of EBPOM, evidence-based perioperative medicine. We'd love you to find out more about that, and the way to do that is ebpom.org. Check out our website and find out about some of the incredible conferences we're going to be arranging across the year. ebpom.org.